So there's something and there's nothing, and then there's everything. There's omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. So if we think of nothing as zero, something as one, and everything as infinity. So right then we'll have to explain how so. We're just a part of everything being infinity. So why? So the midpoint between positive infinity and negative infinity is 0. And so that's why 0 is a number, but infinity is not, because it's proceeding numbers that we haven't accounted for yet. So basically everything. Infinity, the big infinity. So here we now have 3 infinities: positive infinity, negative infinity, and the big infinity, which is both positive and negative infinities. That's the big infinity. Now we have 3 infinities, and the midpoint of this big infinity is 0, and this big infinity is everything. So that's where the everything is. But then there's positive and negative of all this everything. And as you said, nothing is 0, our midpoint apparently, and something is 1. So basically a unit, a representation, a single digit, that 1. So that's our physical world. Let's put it to that assumption. So that's something. And now we have nothing. So I was thinking of nothing being the negative infinity, or rather there is no negative infinity. It should be, but each being is not being, because this is how I'm thinking. There's everything, right? And something. And all of everything is all of these somethings. So all of the somethings. But then nothing also exists. So just as there is something, there is nothing. And by something, I mean everything. So everything is something that exists because it's a positive infinity. But then being of a negative infinity means you don't exist. There's nothing of you. And though it exists, it generally doesn't. Because, like we said, 0 is nothing. So beyond nothing is nothing. That's what I'm trying to explain. So what is this nothingness, the negative infinity? We know it exists because its positive is existence. So though it is non-existence, it exists. Basically we say, well, that's something, and then there's nothing. And what are we implying? You know that particular something exists, but at a particular juncture, it doesn't exist. You look for it, you try to locate it, and so on. Basically, whichever form of measurement you can use to prove the existence of this particular something, you cannot, but it exists in your memory because you knew it existed, but right now it doesn't. So meaning it's not that it never existed, it's just that at this particular point it doesn't exist. So there is a perspective there, because we're considering that at a certain point in time, so this particular point in time that we are considering, and so we go to the whole existence is a storybook thing, where in a certain page you can see this something existing, but now we're at a different page and it doesn't. And the fact that it does not exist in this particular page, it means that in that whole story from then on, assumably, thing won't exist. So this particular thing does not exist. But then this is a point in time, because if we look at the entire book, it does exist. So here we can actually put the example of people who have passed away. Yeah. So these people, we say they don't exist because they're not in existence at this particular point. Yeah. So yeah, they don't exist, but they did exist at a certain point in time. Actually, if we look back into history, it's everybody. Yes, everybody in our past, assuming you don't think Cain is still around. Who else? Okay, Cain, let's just say Cain. Assuming you don't think Cain is around, everyone from the past doesn't exist. But we can say they never existed. So this is the whole part where we said the entire book. In the entire book, you existed, and that means you exist. Though you don't exist right now, but you still existed. So looking at that perspective, that doesn't actually answer the entire whole nothingness, because it just explains that at this particular point, this something is now nothing. Basically, it lost its somethingness. So this something is no longer something, but it's nothing. But this is just a particular point in time. If we look at the entire timeline, then this something, what's something, then it means it's something. So the whole time thing is just, time itself is something. It's something that affects other somethings, just like gravity. Yeah. And actually all these forces. And in that perspective, we assume if time is an object, so is space, and these two objects interact with each other to affect us. Yeah. In the sense that they're four-dimensional. They are four-dimensional substances, and we three-dimensional substances get affected by these four-dimensional substances. In that, consider me a three-dimensional substance writing on a book. So it has pages, and on these pages I can write down using a pencil, and the words, or if it's a drawing, the picture will be a two-dimensional substance. And I've affected this particular substance by drawing it out. Before it did not exist, but now it exists because I drew it out. So that's how affect introducing two substances. Or rather, we can consider it's a two-dimensional being or thing. It's a two-dimensional substance. So this two-dimensional substance does not have control on its own. In its universal existence, in its dimension, it has a life where it lives and interacts with its environment. But all of its actions are based on me, the three-dimensional substance. In the same manner, I am an image, rather, say, I am an image of a four-dimensional being. So it is a particular four-dimensional substance. Yeah, it is this four-dimensional substance that shapes my being. So I, a three-dimensional substance, will interact with my three-dimensional field, mirroring the four-dimensional substance that is casting its shadow, which is me. So that's the entire time-space thing where I was explaining in the storybook. You might not exist in a particular page, but in the entire story, you do exist. And that's how time affects us, in the sense that someone may not exist right now, but they exist in the entire story. So in essence, they do exist. And finalizing that somehow, kind of, we now looked at what we started with, being something, then nothing, then everything. I tried to explain everything, and I tried to explain something, or at least I hope those can count as explanations. Now we are looking at nothing, and what I was trying to explain of nothing is, as much as it doesn't exist, it still exists, because we use this we use it as a reference, because you can't miss the sun if it never rains. Yeah. I think that's how this thing goes. So, and that's what I'm implying. You can't reference something without making the assumption that there is nothing. Yeah. So the nothingness that I was trying to explain, where you might not have existed in some point in time, but at this particular, but in the entire story you exist. It's now the reference of that there is the nothingness of something and the nothingness of infinity, because they both have reference to nothing. So okay, this I'm trying to explain on infinity, but first on nothingness. this the nothingness of everything and the nothingness of something. So this nothingness of something is of people, but the nothingness of everything is all of those longer exist. Or rather, no, it's not really, because there's some point in it is the fact that they no longer exist at a point. That of inexistence, that's also all of unity. Let's leave it at that. To mention something on infinity next time.